Played.
By Katrina, Ramos, Atienza. On Wednesday night, Patrice dragged her tired, aching body, still clad in her drenched jersey and cleats, to the campus mall for a dinner meeting with Paul. She brushed past the clumps of students withdrawing money from ATMs, smoking, scrounging for free Wi-Fi, and hanging out to get to the second-floor restaurant where she was to meet Paul. The place was dim and cozy, with wood-paneled walls and booths. Wicker baskets hung on the ceiling along with trailing plants and brightly colored cushions dotted with the seats. Paul was already seated in the booth, seriously contemplating his cell phone.
Hello.
She said breathlessly. She dumped her gym bags on the floor and threw herself on top of it, resisting the urge to rest her head on the table and just go for a long snooze. I was waiting to see if you'd text, said Paul. Patrice's ears pricked up, but she was too tired to be irritated.
I was only 10 freaking minutes late, Paul.
She said listlessly. He watched her close her eyes and rub her temples for several seconds. She felt his gaze.
Can I help you?
He looked away. Probably embarrassed, she'd imagined someone like him staring at someone like her. Do you, want to order? He handed her a menu.
Fine, whatever.
As the waiter took their orders, the air felt charged, curiously tense.
So, boss, what's the plan?
She rested her chin on her hand. He shuffled his notes. I, thought we could do a narrative essay, said Patrice. He stared at her again.
A narrative essay of what?
She said, I thought you might have an idea. Normally, this would be the perfect opportunity for her to let loose, with some cutting remark at the unsuitability of this applied math skills and sarcastically bemoan her poor BA communications qualifications. But she decided against it. She wanted to get this over with. Besides, if there was one thing she never played around with, it was her academics. If playing nice meant turning out a good paper that allowed her to maintain her good grade point average and her scholarship, she was prepared to endure the worst of Paul.
Let's see.
She began.
It's a 2-person project, and this is expository writing, so obviously there's a lot of description and explanation required, so we can't both do our own thing and splice it together. It has to be cohesive. So we have to decide on a shared topic and pull the paper together based on that. We could do a he said, she said thing, capitalize on our contrasts.
The waiter arrived. She took a sip of water. Our contrasts, said Paul.
Yes, Paul, contrasts, differences.
You think we're very different from each other?
Hello?
She raised an eyebrow. Like how? He pressed. Patrice looked around her.
Well, for one thing, this restaurant.
What about it?
Do you come here often?
All the time. I know the owners.
See, I've only been here twice in my 3 years at the university.
Why is that?
Because I can't afford it.
She said bluntly. Paul blanched. I wish you said something.
Oh, don't worry. One overpriced meal this semester won't reduce me to poverty. And look, I wasn't trying to make you feel bad. I'm just trying to make a point.
His gaze seemed to search her face. And that point is?
We're completely different.
He remained silent, but his expression was incredulous.
You're Mr. Analytical Applied Math who hardly speaks and doesn't dance and hates football and looks down on the art students.
She said hurriedly. Paul's composure was unruffled. And if I were to go by your argument, I would state the opposite. You are Miss Illogical Communications major who blurts out whatever comes to mind, makes a fool of herself on the dance floor, would kill over a simple thing like football, and resents the science students. She swallowed a lump in her throat.
Fair enough,
she said, struggling to contain her shock.
I never really doubted that was what you thought of me.
But then you'd be wrong, said Paul quietly.
But you just said that's...
What I said was modeled on your argument. I simply took your words and said the opposite so as to illustrate my point.
And your point is?
She leaned forward, challenging him. I don't think of you that way at all.
Huh.
Scoffed Patrice.
And how do you think of me?
Paul suddenly leaned back, seemingly irritated. The waiter arrived with their baked macaroni, but the tension on the table remained. I think of you very differently, she finally said, in a very soft, strange tone of voice that Patrice strained to hear. Patrice did not know what to answer. He was now looking at her with a gaze that she could not read. It seemed to try to tell her something, but what? She didn't know. Slightly flustered, she concentrated on the macaroni. Silently, he watched her eat. Then he cleared his throat and said in a much more business-like tone, I understand your suggestion about capitalizing on, as you said, our contrasts. She nodded. What do you think about us each describing a specific event so that they run parallel to each other? It would have to be the same event, of course, he added.
That works.
She said in a way that she hoped sounded casual.
What event?
It could be a childhood memory or a shared situation.
I doubt that you would have any situations to share with me,
said Patrice. Paul looked irritated again. I think there are common experiences regardless of social status. First plane rides, first kisses, favorite toys, major parental disagreements.
Well, I have never been on a plane, yet.
She argued.
And I'm an orphan.
She bit her lip, silently scolding herself for blurting that out to him of all people. Miss Alia knew some of her story, but it was only Gia who knew it completely. Most of the time, she had hoped to pass for having parents abroad. Hill looked at her for a long time, with his hard-to-read eyes.
Don't pity me.
She finally said, forcing calm into her voice.
My aunt has been taking care of me since... and Miss Alia is like a second mom. Money's tight, yeah, but there's football, and that takes care of a bit of that. I'll graduate soon anyway and earn myself, so it's not really a big deal.
When did you lose, said Paul uncertainly. When did they pass away?
Well, my dad died when I was a baby.
Said Patrice.
Mom was always sickly. She lived with her sister, my aunt, obviously, and they both looked after me. And then in high school, that's when Mom finally followed Dad, and that was I was 13, I guess.
She picked at the macaroni, and for several minutes, both of them ate in silence. I was 4, said Paul quietly.
Huh?
I was 4 when my parents, he explained. Patrice didn't know quite how to react. He hung his head low like a child, and suddenly she longed to reach across the table and hold his hand.
I'm so sorry,
she said. No, he said abruptly. Don't be. She debated if she should ask him how it happened, but he startled her by saying, they were on a boat to Bacolod. We had some relatives there. My grandfather told me that Pa wanted to take the plane, but Mama was scared of flying. The boat, it sank. Made the news and everything. I don't remember much, actually. My grandparents have clippings and stuff, but I don't want to look at them. I mean, obviously.
So your grandparents raised you?
Asked Patrice. Yes. He blinked several times, sipped water, cleared his throat, and had a few bites of macaroni. So, he said, and now he sounded distant once again, arrogant and direct. Would you like to write about that?
Yes, if it's okay with you.
Yes, that's fine, he said quickly.
Oh.
Said Patrice.
Well, we could do around 6 pages each of our essay. That comes to 12 pages.
Obviously, said Paul. I remember having to do 15 pages, yes. This was said so rudely that Patrice's ears tingled.
I know that. I'm not deaf or stupid. I remember our instructions too. So we'll do 6 each. That leaves a page for the intro and a couple at the end to tie the whole thing together.
Okay, said Paul, avoiding her gaze.
So 6 pages each. Do you want to work together on doing the intro? Will you trust me enough to do it myself?
But
I might be a lowly art student, but writing's one of my main skills, even if you think it's laughably simple.
I didn't say that, he said. Patrice took a deep breath to steady herself. Why was she so rattled by him? Why was she so annoyed at his change of tone? She held very still, composing herself. Finally, she managed a tight grimace.
Right. Well, if you have no strong objections, I'll do the intro and the typing up, okay?
Paul looked like he wanted to argue, but stopped at the steely glint in her eyes. Fine.
Great.
She said, faking a smile.
Email me your stuff next week.
She texted him her email address.
And I'll work on it over the weekend. So we'll polish it on Monday and pass it in on the next class.
Yes, he said, sounding strangely disappointed. They finished their meal in silence, only speaking to argue over the bill. He wanted to pay for her meal. She felt insulted. And after the heated exchange, he agreed to go Dutch. She gathered her bag and stood to leave. How are you getting home?
Walking.
I have a car. I could just take you.
Well, I just forgot. I have to pass by the grocery downstairs to get some supplies, and...
She said, making it up as she talked. It's almost 10. The grocery's already closed, he said stiffly.
Well,
That's fine, said Paul. Fine. He stood and gave her a brief, stiff, formal kind of nod, which seemed almost a bow. Patrice resisted and urged to curtsy. He looked at her for several moments, seemingly distressed, and she waited for him to say something. Anything. But then he nodded again and quickly left.
well played.
By Katrina,